oftentimes you see a lot of people traveling, but we really didn't know how they got there. This is how much I spent, and this is how much I saved to enjoy that trip. Hey, isn't it so fulfilling that I was able to fund this trip responsibly, and I was able to do it because I had savings for me to cover it. I just came from my 2-week New York trip, and I wanted to just sit down, chit chat, get ready with me to share how much I spent in that trip. And the thing is, the last time I was there, I was still a shopaholic. So it definitely tested me in terms of how I wanted things to be different, in terms of how much I spent, how I'd feel not guilty about spending and shopping on the things that I really liked. So let's talk about it. Also, I figured I wanted to share with you what was my go-to makeup look during travel. So let me do that at the same time while I chika. Magkano ba ginastos ko recently? So if you've been following me on Instagram, I've shared there some snippets of my trip to New York last October. And I wanted to do an in-depth video on ano yung mga nagastos, how much in total I've spent from my plane ticket to the shopping to the food and everything. So this is actually, I plan to have like a 2-part series. So this video will be how much I spent, and then the next video is how I travel without going broke, because that's important. First, pag-usapan natin plane ticket. It was actually my goal to treat my husband for the plane ticket to New York. It was my 2nd year wedding anniversary gift. So the total amount that I spent for plane tickets is 119,804 pesos to be exact. So if you split that per person, it's 59K. Surprisingly, mas mahal pa yung New York ticket ko than when I went to Europe, to Germany specifically for my destination then, from Manila to Germany. Mas mahal yung Manila to New York. And then, my brother who lives in New York, so we visited him and that's also where we stayed. Kinento niya na everything that passes through New York, mas nagmamahal lang talaga. So, that's something that I did not fully expect. I knew it was gonna be more expensive. Also, the day-to-day expenses there, everything has tip, especially if you're dining in. So, dun mas nagmahal. So, I didn't expect na sobrang mas magiging mahal sa New York yung mga gastos compared to my Europe trip in terms of day-to-day expenses. So, every single day for my travels, I always have like a mattifying primer and foundation because I feel like that's what allows my makeup to last the longest hanggang pag-uwi. So that's what I just did. And then I always apply like a peach corrector like this for the dark circles that I will always have no matter how much I sleep because it's generic. So I always apply that before concealer because it allows it to neutralize the darkness under the eye. So if you're like a dark circle girly like me, peach corrector is where it's at. So I never skip this even when I travel. Then after that, I apply concealer na. So that will help brighten things up. So going back to the expenses, so now in terms of accommodation, luckily I can stay with my brother. So my husband and I stayed at my brother and sister-in-law's apartment. So that's where we stayed for 2 weeks for the duration of our trip. We were able to save on that. For transportation naman, we primarily use the subway trains and also my brother's car. So yung brother ko yung nagda-drive, he would bring us to places. Kasi yung apartment where he stayed, it's 1 hour away from the city of New York. So I only learned that, so like New York City is like the main city, pero may mga suburban areas in New York na mas malayo, pero it's not the chaotic vibe that you usually see in the movies. So that's where my brother stays. So what would happen is if kuya ko yung may dala ng car, we would ambag for the parking, and then if it's train, then we would pay for our own ticket, and then sa mismong city proper, in order for us to go to places, that's when we would take the subway, and then mostly we would just walk around to go to places. So the great thing about their subway train system is you can just use their credit card to tap and then pasok ka na sa mismong train. Unlike before, my first time there years ago, you still had to like buy ticket there, may booth, they still had like a specific card that you need to tap. Now, as long as you have your credit card, you can just tap. So I was able to keep track of how much I tapped in order to get into the subway, how much I paid for parking as ambag for my brother's car, and then also yung when we took the train 1 hour away to New York City. So it totaled to $113, and that's around 6,554 pesos. That's the estimate total I had for the past 14 days that we went back and forth to New York City. Just also to note, in between those days, we also went to New Jersey because that's where we were able to like hang out with our cousins and relatives. So that was also one of like the best highlights that I remember from the trip, is like being able to reunite with cousins and relatives that I haven't seen for the longest time. And it just felt fulfilling na I was able to be at a point where I could visit my cousins na I really cherish. Like, you know, like those are gonna be like the core memories. Like one of the things we did were like, we went to a club in New Jersey na where my cousin was DJing at. We were able to do like a fun bonfire at my cousin's house in New Jersey. So yun yung mga parang nakakatuwa lang na like, it's not necessarily like the landmark, you know, but it's like one of the best things that we were able to do there, like being able to bring my husband there and, you know, meet everyone, bond with everyone. It's just going to always have a special place in my heart, you know, beyond all of the shopping, the tourist spots and everything. Like, it's really those moments that you get to spend with loved ones, with my brother, with my sister-in-law. My sister also went to New York. It was like this whole reunion that we had na nagkumplita naman kaming magkakapatid. And so has always been the reason why I love to travel, is because yung mga kapatid ko, yung mga relatives, they're abroad. And so they're not always necessarily going to visit the Philippines. So being able to have the privilege and the savings to be able to meet my relatives in different countries is like one of the best things that I enjoy the most, because I was able to be at this point where I've built sustainable money habits and systems. I've worked on my mindset around money that allowed me to enjoy these trips and not worry about getting broke in the process, that I just get to fully enjoy being there with people I love. So speaking of the things that I shopped, one of those things is this rare beauty blush that I've always wanted to try because I've heard great reviews about it, and I'm running out of a liquid blush. This is what I like to apply as a blush underneath powder blush that I'm going to apply later on. So this is what I've been doing in New York since I bought this one. And then we're going to set everything in place so it doesn't move and it lasts through 20,000 steps. Yes. So sa New York, I wore a watch to track my steps. So I've been serious about my 10,000 steps a day. And so in New York, I wanted to know how much steps I would average. And 20,000 steps siya a day, guys. So parang lahat ng mga kinain, na-burn din. And talagang sulit, madami talagang napuntahan. I would say in terms of like tourist spots, for me, my favorite would have to be Summit Vanderbilt. So this is where we would see like overlooking of New York City. We saw the Empire State Building, the One World Observatory, and then it feels like you're literally standing on the top of the world, seeing everything. And then I'd say the second one that comes to mind would have to be Central Park, because it's like the most iconic place that you would see in like movies. Pag New York, it's Central Park. And I would say underrated one that everyone must also visit is Greenwich Village. It's like a neighborhood away from New York City. Parang yun yung vibes na for me. It seems so much slower. It seems more chill compared to like if you'd go to the main like Times Square na ang gulo-gulo, ang dami nangyayari, versus if you go to Greenwich Village, parang dun mo nakikita yung if you're like living in New York, what locals are doing, how they're chilling. Parang I really like the vibes, especially now we went during fall. So it's really nice to see like that other side of New York na very chill and very slow. And then it's just nice to do people watching for me. Like, I already enjoy just seeing different people and how they interact. So actually, if I wasn't doing this video, I wouldn't have taken note, honestly, of like how much I spent on food and stuff, because for me, as long as I have an amount that I know I'm gonna spend, I just spend that. But for the sake of this video, I just wanted to let you know, I took note of like how much like my food was every day for the past 14 days, and it resulted to a total of $622, and that's around 36,000 pesos. Honestly, parang $45 lang siya a day, and honestly, ang mura nun, because what I was expecting was like $70 to $100 a day. Yun talaga yung binudget ko. Here's the thing, nakatipid ako ng breakfast, because pag breakfast, we usually eat at home at my brother's place and my sister-in-law's place. So we would just like buy groceries like sausage, eggs, bread, and then yun yung kakainin namin for breakfast. And then my brother makes amazing coffee. So usually breakfast nakakatipid on that. And so, ang nangyari is, I would just end up spending for lunch and dinner. So that's one of the tips I'm gonna share, is like how you can like enjoy food pa rin there, pero hindi naman sobrang gagastos na doon mapupunta lahat ng pera mo, diba? So, by the way, I'm using like a microblading eyebrow pen. So the combination of having eyebrow gel and then putting this microblading pen, it does not budge. Kahit na nung nag-clubbing thing kami sa New Jersey, kahit inabot kami ng 1 a.m. noon, buhay pa rin yung kilay ko. So, I would say a good insight is that like in New York City talaga, lahat mas mahal. So, for example, I'd say the most expensive experience that we ate at is this like Japanese place na para siyang hidden gem, na parang hindi mo akalain restaurant pa rin papasukan mo, pero restaurant siya. So, it had great reviews on Google, so we wanted to try it. So, inabot siya ng mga $35 per person. We were 4 people there, and that's how much we ended up spending per person, and that includes tip na. So that's like 2,000 per person. Yun nagpapamahal usually pag nagda-dine-in ka is tip. So like if I remember correctly, if you're like 4 people, 18% yung titip mo. So like from your total bill, 18% yung ititip mo. If you're more than 4 people, 20% ng bill yung tip mo. So like we would split the tip between us 4 for that. Pero I'd say yun na yung pinakamahal. Pero saan nakakatipid is like if you just buy like halal food. So yung mga parang food trucks nila, like it would just be like $5, sobrang dami na. So that's what I would do. I would do a mix of both. Na okay, like we want to experience like sitting down in a restaurant, trying out food na talagang, you know, may magandang service, but then we'd also try yung mga nasa tabi-tabi lang na sulit din naman. For example, isa sa mga sulit na talagang hindi ko makakalimutan na pagkain is their Chinese food. As in, sobrang daming laman. OA sa laman. Tapos like, what? $6? Like, pwede na kayo mag-share dalawa. Kami ng husband ko, sobrang dami nila mag-serving doon sa Chinese food. Tapos, ang sarap talaga. So, that's why, pwede ka talagang makatipid with that. But then, for me, I wanted to balance both. So, I would say, like, a good estimate would be like $70 a day talaga. So, $70 a day. So, that's like 4,060 pesos a day. So, by the way, what I applied in my eye earlier is eyeshadow primer. So, that's what allows my eyeshadow to stay forever. Pero like until the end of the day. So that's what I apply, eyeshadow primer, put powder, and then that's where I'm going to apply eyeshadow. So that's what I've been doing for the longest time. So I don't skip this pa rin, because if you have oily lids like me, like hindi talaga siya magtatagal. So that is my hack always. Eyeshadow primer always. So we're going to get into the most exciting part soon, which is how much I spent on shopping. So kayo mag-alala, makakarating tayo dun. But before there, I wanted to share also internet, like how much I spent on having internet. So for me, priority ko siya talaga, kasi I didn't want to feel like pag may gusto kong puntahan, di ako pwede humiwalay sa husband ko. Tapos kung maghiwalay kami, di ako mag-worry na baka mawala, baka hindi makapag-communicate, ganyan. So sabi ko, we need to make sure we have separate internet para may freedom lang kami to go around if we need na mag-separate ways muna in a certain location. Like kunyari, pagpunta ako ng Sephora, wala naman siya interest doon, punta mo na siya somewhere, diba? Yung tip lagi is yung eSIM. Pero I couldn't use eSIM because I still have a contract with Globe. Matatapos pa siya ng January. So, naka-lock in pa rin ako sa kanila. So, I had to use roaming. But then, honestly, sulit naman. Kasi, okay, ang bilis ng internet. Ang bilis ng internet naman ng Globe. So, I used their 15 days of Globe roaming to USA. So, may specific promo for USA roaming, that was 2,000 pesos. Although hindi ko siya naubos, parang sulit na siya kasi 20 gig rin siya for 15 days. And mabilis siya, in fairness naman. Although I don't really like do a lot of TikTok or Instagram or anything, which you shouldn't because you're traveling anyway. So it was really just more for like communication with the people I was with. And then I always like to bring like very compact eyeshadow palettes like this one. So this one I bought before in my Europe trip. Sulit naman siya because it's very versatile. So I would either use the dark brown shade here to line my upper lash line, or I also bring this like Issy eye palette kasi nandito yung favorite ko na dark brown shade right here. So, that's what I do. So, before, matyaga pa ako, mag-wing pa ako. Pero pagka parang di mo na feel because gusto mo na umalis, ayaw mag-take ng time ng makeup mo. So, what I do, I just put like, I do a liner using this. So, I just tip this like that. And then, I just line it like this. So, parang ano lang, may definition lang sa upper lash line. For me, it makes a difference in pictures. So, yun yung inisip ko. Like, ano yung maganda sa picture? Yun yung mga priorities, diba? Sayang naman na doon ka na, edi might as well, pack na, diba? Yung look mo. So, yun yung iniisip ko. What would look good in pictures na I don't also wanna think about my makeup while I'm there. Like, gusto ko, eto na yun, that's it, di ako magre-retouch. Yun yung goal ko. Ayoko mag-retouch kasi ayoko na isipin yung makeup ko. But there, do you see the difference? This to this. Definitely makes a difference when you're taking photos. And then, after I put that, I use like a more fluffy brush like this and just rub this, ganyan, para mas mukha lang siyang smoky liner, hindi yung sobrang defined. I personally just like that look more, like that. And then, I put a little bit sa lower lash line ko. Again, for definition. So now, let's talk about how much I spent shopping. Okay, so with this one, I really wanted to be intentional about it and really set like a wish list, like this is what I plan to buy, and also have a contingency for like the things that when I see there, like, I want to be able to buy as well. Kasi sometimes you want to have a wish list, but also there are things that you realize once you're there, and I wanted to have that flexibility. So what I did, I really set a like a cap, and also I also thought about pasalubong din. So kasi nung month na yon, birthday rin ng parents ko. Okay, so pares sila, like we also looked for gifts for them, and then also we wanted to treat like my brother and sister-in-law there as well. So the shopping amount that I'm gonna tell you is a mixture of shopping for myself, shopping for others, shopping for family, pasalubong, and things like that, and the total is $1,306, which if you convert is around 75,000 pesos. So that's why I had a disclaimer there because hindi yun lahat sa akin. So I'd say half would be mine and then half would be like mga pasalubongs and gifts to others. So let me give you the tea on like the highlights of what I shopped for because I feel like ito talaga yung months in the making. Talagang inisip ko talaga, okay, ito talaga yung focus ko. Okay. So first in that category of what I shopped for are Skims. So I really like the Skims bodysuits. So one of them is this one I'm wearing right here. It's like the most comfortable, breathable, but also like smoothing tops that I own. So I bought one before in Europe. So ever since then, talagang nagustuhan ko talaga siya, and I said I wanted to invest in these pieces na alam ko I'm going to use a lot of and something na staple sa wardrobe ko. And so that's what I primarily bought. So ang ginawa ko is I bought it online and pinaship ko na sa brother ko para when I arrived there, it's already there because that's the best way to get like their sales and discounts also. So I spent around $200 for that, and even though it's pricey, I knew that there were investment pieces. another thing on my wish list that I really wanted to prioritize na mahal, but I knew it was an investment, would be Lululemon leggings. Like, I do yoga every day, or I do some kind of movement every day, and I use leggings every day. I said I think it's time for me to again invest in a really nice piece. And the best way that I can do that is like through outlet stores. Ang daming mga outlets doon na you really get a good deal. So, I bought 2 Lululemon leggings, and talagang mahal siya. Hindi ko talaga siya bibili sa Pilipinas. Pero since like, you know, I was there and I really planned for it, then I felt good doing it. And then, another exciting thing that I bought from my wish list are 2 pairs of shoes. So, I bought the Nike Vomero shoes. So, it's kind of, again, like the 2 ways that I like that you can use it for working out, and then you can also use it for athleisure. And then the second pair is the Veja shoes. This one, I never had a style like this, but I felt like it's so versatile that I could use it for casual, smart casual, events, things like that. It's going back to like being intentional about I have the budget for it. I was able to cover it with my budget, and so I felt good na okay, this is the time where you can spend on yourself. Like, you don't have to feel guilty about it. Now it's like I know I'm going to make use of them, and I know that I plan for them, that I plan this amount to be spent. You know, it's not something that it's gonna make me struggle by the time I get home. Like, I know that when the bill comes, I know that I'll be able to cover it. And I think that's important as a message also to my clients, because every time that they tell me like, okay, for example, especially my clients who eventually pay off their debts and they have this big room now to spend, they feel guilty about it because they're like, wait lang, parang hindi ako sanay na may room ako to spend, you know. And I remember that came up from one of our group calls inside my program, and a good reminder to that is reminding ourselves that, hey, it's safe to have fun because you're different now. You're like a whole different person. You're more responsible now. You're more intentional now. You're more purposeful now. And so that's also the reminder that I had to myself, that I gave myself permission to shop because I'm a different person. Di na ako nagba-blackout. Di na ako parang sobrang impulsive sa lahat. Ganyan. Now, it's like I had a wish list, and I also had room in my budget to be flexible to cover these things. So stay tuned for my next video where I'm going to talk about how I travel, enjoy spending on travel without going broke, because it really boils down to how you manage your money, how you plan for this travel, so that you also don't get anxious na, oh my gosh, am I spending a lot? Am I spending too much? You know, like, you also want to enjoy spending, shopping within your budget, within your means, not to the point of like destroying your finances just so you could be like, kailan pa ako babalik dito? Yun yung mga ganon. So, I'll do an in-depth video of that in my next one. But, for now, let's do a total of how much I spent. If you were keeping up, the total amount that I spent for New York when I visited for 2 weeks cost me 241,804 pesos. So that amount actually came from my freedom fund that I always talk about in this channel, how important it is, because ultimately I was able to shop, I was able to enjoy without touching my emergency fund. And it's because I had a separate freedom fund for me to enjoy my travels, for me to be in the moment, for me to savor these things that I get to experience during this time. And the thing is, that amount that I saved up for this trip did not happen overnight. It's something that I have been saving up for months and months. I think that's something to note also, that because oftentimes you see a lot of people traveling, but we really didn't know how they got there. And that's what I really wanted to talk about here, is that this is how much I spent and this is how much I saved to enjoy that trip. Because it's different to travel but then go home stressed about how much you spent, versus being able to travel, being able to afford it, and going home with peace of mind, with joy that, hey, isn't it so fulfilling that I was able to fund this trip responsibly, and I was able to do it because I had savings for me to cover it. So here I am applying bronzer and now blush. So ito yung sabi ko, kailangan maglagay ng powder blush if I want my blush to last the whole day, na hindi ko siya kailangan i-retouch. So todang-todo na yung blush, ganyan, kasi mabilis naman yan mawala. Okay, so talagang tinotodo ko na yan. And then setting spray, so important. So that it lasts even longer. And then for my lips, I always like to do a lip tint because it lasts longer. Like this one, this is my favorite one. Just like that. So this is the finished makeup look, my go-to travel makeup look. Every time I go on a trip, that's easy and I know it's gonna last. And that's also the total amount I've spent for my New York trip for the past 2 weeks. And stay tuned for my next video on how I go in depth in terms of budgeting tips that I did so that I could enjoy these trips without worrying about my finances, knowing that I can afford that I am able to enjoy having fun and it's safe to enjoy these trips. So I'm going to share that on how I travel without going broke. So stay tuned for that next upload and I will see you there.